Hey crew, Coach here. How you doing this week? I am so happy to be here because we are going to delve into a topic of this. We're talking about strictly a landscape project budget, how to arrive at it, how to plan around it, and how to avoid some of the pitfalls that I have seen over many, many years. Many clients that I have consulted with over the years, many times their budget falls apart because of one major thing. They have champagne taste on a beer income, as my grandmother used to say. Or basically they have pie in the sky ideas that are generated from things on television, things on Pinterest, and things on Google Images. They think that is the Taj Mahal and that's what they want to have for their landscape. But then reality checks into the hotel and all of a sudden they're dejected, they're frustrated, and basically nothing gets done. This week we're going to focus on this budget. We're going to have a short discussion on how you can take a project from infantile area to completion within the scope of your resources and your means. Are you with me? Glad you're here. Let's get started. Hey, I'm Matt. You can call me Coach. Hey, every week, every Friday, I come to you with a brand new educational DIY landscape video that teaches you landscape design concepts and theories in an easy to understand format so you can go out and tackle a project yourself, get results that you really want, and save a boatload of money in the process. Oh, by the way, being a heck of a lot more self-reliant in this day and age. After a 20+ year career, I bring with me a lot of knowledge and experience that I want to share with you. The new, self-reliant, modern, educated homeowner of today. Okay, we're talking about that almighty dollar, that sawbuck, and how we can take an idea and a concept of a landscape project, whether you are doing it yourself, which I greatly prefer you do, or if you're going to hire it out and have a professional come in and do it. Where do you start? How do you delve into this money issue so that everybody's happy, and you're not eating pork and beans 5 days a week in order to afford new grass, new cement, and new trees? Well, that's what we're talking about today. So let's move forward. You know, that pork and beans line was a line that I developed as an icebreaker when I used to go and consult with people for design and contracting work. I honestly brought with me the thought that I would hate to see somebody go into the poorhouse as a result of a new landscape. So as a designer and a professional, I would always use that line, you know. I don't want to have anybody eat pork and beans 5 days a week just so they can afford a new yard. So that got me as a segue into talking realistically with these strangers. How much do they really have to spend? What kind of budget do you have, and what kind of budget should I be putting in a professional landscape design and possibly a project that I would be doing for them? And oftentimes people would kind of hold their cards kind of close to the vest a little bit. You know, they didn't want to talk about money just yet. They wanted all this info from me first. And that was okay because I had already planted the seed. And at those kitchen tables, by the time I left, I knew I generally left with a range of a budget on which to put into the design, which gave me, you know, if you just pulled a cat out of the hat, their budget was probably right about in the middle. I don't know, Coach, you know, maybe 10,000, maybe 20,000. So I always shot for 15. Oh, maybe 30,000, 40,000. We're not sure what things cost. Okay, we're talking about 35,000. That is how I would go back to the design table and I would start designing stuff up so that I was within or below that budget. But oftentimes people would come to me with these Pinterest pictures and these, I don't know, way over the top ideas. And I would have to kind of rein them in. And I would have to say, realistically, what you are talking about sounds fantastic, but you're nowhere near your budget level. You're talking $30,000 and $40,000 easily over what you're talking about as a budget. So where does a layperson, someone who is not in the home improvement world, where do they come up with a budget? Well, you got to start realistically by looking at your bank statement. As a homeowner, you got to look and see, what are our monthlies? What are our monthly bills? What can we actually afford to do? Can we afford Coach to come in and do this job for us, and we'll just go out and do some overtime shifts? This is a realistic conversation that you yourself, if you're the captain of your own ship, or you and your significant other, your partner, whatever, you have to determine where the line in the sand has to be drawn. So, in shopping for a professional, we're going to go down that road first. In shopping for a professional, you as the potential client or customer need to have that figure in your head. You don't have to give them a specific figure, although that makes things really easy for us. You do have to have that range. You have to have that ability to say, you know, I know we can do this and we might be able to get up to here, but nothing more. That way that professional is going to know, number one, you've thought it out. Number two, you're a serious homeowner with serious project in mind. Those two things make a professional like myself know, okay, I'm not dealing with a tire kicker, which we will talk about here in a few minutes. You know, as a little aid in coming up with a budget, you can kind of figure from a contractor's perspective, at least the generations of contractors that I dealt with and myself, generally, whatever budget it is, we'll use an even number of $10,000, even though in this day and age that's starting to get kind of low. But we'll use $10,000. And if I designed a $10,000 makeover for your front yard, you can figure that I'm going to have around $5,000 in materials and $5,000 in labor cost, administrative costs, profit margins, etc. So you can kind of get that idea. So when you hear a contractor or a designer give you a figure, you know, especially a contractor, you're going to know that it's pretty close to 50-50 materials and labor. So look out into your front yard or look out into your backyard and kind of judge, hey, if we're going to do a total makeover, what would they probably have to do? Oh my God, look at that patio. They're going to have to take that patio out. Geez, look at that maple tree. That thing is huge. It's overwhelming our backyard. It's probably going to have to come out. That old galvanized 45-year-old sprinkler system is probably going to have to be replaced. Having those things in mind before someone even comes over is going to give you an idea, okay, those costs are going to be there. Now, a lot of people, hey, they have a bigger checkbook than you and I, and they can write checks without any problem, and kudos to them. But most of us, and I say most of us, we have to do these home improvements on a budget, and a pretty strict one at that. So consider that when you're bringing in that professional, you know about that 50-50 mix between materials and labor, and you know that you can't go over X amount, not XY, X amount. You know, if you've saved all your money, you've made arrangements for some type of additional financing to make this project happen, you know that adding to your monthly budget through, you know, a HELOC finance or a second mortgage or, God forbid, a family loan, anything like that, you know that your top of the line budget is going to be this, and you need to make that a cement ceiling. Cement, not glass, okay? Because many times people get all infatuated about fancy designs and improvements and pictures and all this other stuff. Yeah. And then when it's all said and done and you're having to write those checks, you're just going, oh my God, I have a beautiful front yard and I'm going to have to get a second job. In this day and age, we don't want to stretch ourselves like that. That kind of debt is very detrimental. Many times, especially in my generation of landscaping, TV media, especially channels like HGTV or DIY Network or PBS, you know, they had some really great shows on there on landscaping. You know, Yard Crashers and other ones on the DIY Network. I can't even remember some of them now. It's been so while since I've seen them. But they really did kind of a disservice to the average American homeowner. You know, there was tens upon tens of thousands of dollars that were pumped into fairly simple yards, and they got the gooch. Man, it just made you want to be that person at a box store that day when that host walked up to you and said, "Hey, I got an idea." Don't you wish you just said yes if you were one of those people? But that's not reality. That's TV, and that's a little bit of fantasy. And so when you have a reasonable landscape makeover that you want to improve and make your yard more functional for you and yours, consider the fact that small 5 figures in this day and age is a minimal, and then you go up from there, unless you're doing it yourself. If you go DIY route, then you have already earned yourself a 50% discount, am I right? 50% off a landscape project with the backlash that it has to be done by you. Now, if you happen to check out this video where I talked about having a blended approach to a landscape project, then you could go in it with, you're going to do X amount of the project and you're going to have a pro come in and do the other X. That's probably going to be about a 35% savings, 35% off. Not too bad. But then again, that portions are on you. And in this day and age, with 2 incomes and a couple of kids and life and soccer practice and holidays on the way, all of this is going to require time. So you have a choice. Save the money, do it yourself. Spend the money and give it up to a professional. Those are really the only 2 choices you have to make. But you have to do it within the box of a reasonable person and a reasonable and prudent budget so that you can continue to live the lifestyle you lead. When you have things like a mortgage, you have taxes, you have house insurance, you have health insurance, you have car payments, you have credit card debt, you have food, you have utilities. We have lots and lots and lots of debt that we have to meet every single month. Now, will this landscape project add to it? Or have you been able to supplement cash under your mattress for 2, 3, 4 years, and you can have at least half of it put down in cash? And then you float a small second mortgage and maybe end up with an additional $150, $200 a month payment, and you have what you want as far as a landscape project. So whether you DIY it or you source it out, before you even put pencil to paper, before you even pick up the phone and call somebody to come over for an estimate or a consult, before you pick up the car keys and go get a cup of joe and go to the nursery to start getting ideas and stuff, you and everybody concerned has to come up with this in their mind. A solid version of what are we really going to and can we afford to spend. It makes the job so much easier if you know that you're within that financial box that allows that project to move forward and not stall out with arguments and frustration and head banging against a wall. It makes it so much more enjoyable, and you'll really enjoy the process if you know that you're still going to be financially solvent and solid when the job is all done. So for you DIYers out there, and I mentioned this in a recent video, I think I'll put it up here too. If you seek a landscape designer services, that landscape designer can put something together for you called a master plan. And if it is properly given to you, if you're properly educated on what everything is on there, that design will become your DIY roadmap to a completed landscape project. And then you can budget this thing as you see fit. You can do it in phases. We'll talk about phases in just a second. And you can do it in phases so that at the end of the phase and all your resources have paid off each phase, you now have a completed landscape project according to that landscape design master plan. And that is where Coach got his self-employed route started many, many years ago. And because a lot of people still did DIY stuff then. Now, not as much. People want to outsource it because their lives are just way too busy. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to point you into a couple different avenues, though you're not just wrapped in a huge wool blanket of debt any further. So as a rule, the phase approach works well for DIYers. It does not work so well for professionals, and I'll tell you why. Professionals like to come upon a job site where they know they are going to start it and they're going to finish it. They're going to bring all their people in, they're going to bring all their tools and equipment in, and they'll be able to jump on that project once and for all and get it done in a reasonable period of time so that their schedule throughout the year stays on course. And they don't have to come in and do demo and then leave for 4 weeks. Come in and do flat work and then leave for 6 weeks. Come in and do irrigation and underground work and then leave again. You see where I'm going with that? It's very inconvenient for a contractor. They prefer to come and land on site, start it, get it underway, have all their materials and their sourcing and their availabilities brought to bear on your job site, get it done and move on. At least that's how I did it. There are people that come in and, touch it here and there, but that's because those contractors tend to want to do 5 jobs at a time because their season might be a little shorter. So they have a crew big enough to where they can start on Jones, go to Smith, go on Jones, come back to Smith, go over to Jones, and they can do that with that number of people. Smaller companies, like what I ran, not as convenient at all. It was really problematic to try to do that kind with just 1 to 3 people on a crew. So when it comes to boiling down your costs, I'd like to give you a small list of things to consider, and then you go forming your budget, you go out and do some due diligence. Okay, number 1 is designer costs, should you decide to go down that road. How much will these cost? An average designer, depending on their qualifications, can be anywhere from $400 to $4,000. If you go landscape architect, it's going to be $3,000 to $7,000, depending on who they are, what the resources are, and what area you live in. Number 2, demolition costs. Existing landscapes you're making over will always require some demolition, and as such, costs that are involved in it. Demolition costs such as, do you have all the tools needed? Do you have dumpsters? Do you have trailers? Do you have a truck? The cost of the refuge yard themselves. What costs are all involved in that? That's generally pretty much a call. You can do some rentals, you can do some big borrow and steal from circles of influence to bring in those things, and you can get an idea how much demolition cost itself is going to run you. Number 3, bulk materials cost. Soils, compost, barks, gravels, boulders, all these things are going to have a cost, and it would help for you to go out and at least go to a bulk materials yard and go, okay, there's topsoil and that is X number per cubic yard, there's compost, it costs this much, bark finishes, gravels, here's some boulders, okay, I got an idea. Take you all of a couple hours at the most. Plant material, depending on the time that you're going to plan either having this done or you're going to do it yourself, check on availability of plant material. Plant material, as a rule, is about the only material in a landscape project that is going to vary in price. And the only way it's going to vary is if you get it next year, you're always going to see an increase. Or you have stuff at a nursery or a box store or wherever you decide to get it that's on sale. And by the time it goes on sale, it probably isn't the healthiest stuff in the nursery. You also have to worry about special orders. Maybe your landscape designer has come up with plants that are going to require special order. Special order will require time. Time generally costs money. Nurseries and plant suppliers, they require a certain amount of order in order to get those plant materials to the nursery. If you want 5 unique plants and they're not going to have those unique plants at wholesale nursery A, they're not going to have the ability to fill an order for 3 months. You may be waiting a long time. You might have to shop other nurseries to find these various plant materials. Time is money. The other thing is like fertilizers, tools to actually plant, etc. Hardscape costs. Hardscape being cement, walkways and patios, if that's what you're doing, fencing, if you're needing to do those issues, irrigation, drainage, lighting, electrical, structural stuff like patio covers, if you're truly going down that road, and hot tubs, big ticket items, big costs. Learn what they are first. And finally, cleanup costs, which are somewhat nominal, but still it's kind of like demolition costs. You're going to need a trailer, you're going to need a small dumpster or a pickup at the very least to haul the stuff off. Keep a good, clean work site at all times, a safe work site at all times, especially front yard landscape makeovers when you have public exposure to things, trippables and fall-inables and those kinds of things. You want to make sure those are all cordoned off if you're doing it yourself, and make sure your contractor makes it safe too. Nobody goes home unless things are covered up, things are taped off, and everything is obvious and safe. So with that type of education, you can come up with a holy crap, how did this stuff get so expensive type of thought, or you can go, okay, doing that due diligence, it kind of will match up with the budget that we're kind of considering. And that's a win-win if you come to that conclusion. If you come up with the conclusion that there ain't no way in hell, the budget we have is good enough for a good yard cleanup, maybe some fresh bark, and call it good for now. Well, that's okay. Live within that box for now and continue to save till you can afford what you really want. But just with that list of materials, you can see how you could blow through a $5,000 budget like that. There won't be anything left. So if you have $5,000 to spend and you expect all those things, time to reevaluate, an honest reevaluation, period. If you have $5,000 in materials, you know that probably by the time you're able to do it, you're going to need probably about $7,500, because every single project always increases in cost because you have missed stuff, especially a DIYer. For contractors, we give you an estimate, we write up a contract, we're held to that unless a customer changes it or we find something that we just did not expect in the project itself. You know, many people really never understand the cost of new landscape makeovers. And yet oftentimes they don't think anything about dropping $45,000, $50,000 on a kitchen makeover or $70,000 or $80,000 on an extended bedroom. They think, well, those are justified costs. That's stainless steel appliances. That's hardwood floors. That's fancy cabinets. You know, those costs transfer into landscape costs as well. It takes a lot of money to raise plants nowadays. It takes a lot of money to find and source out soils and process barks and all the things that go into a landscape, not to even mention the cost of running a business and having employees. So, we talked a little bit earlier about sources of funding, and I mentioned this a lot in my book and also in the digital course in great detail. So check out the website, youryardcoach.com. So we have home equity line of credit, HELOCs, we have second mortgages, find them at good low rates. You know, if you take a second mortgage and you have a good amount of equity in your home after a year or two, you know, you might be able to fund up a $20,000, $25,000 second mortgage. And with today's rates, maybe you'll only be tacking on $150, maybe $200 to your mortgage. And if you can float that, perfect. There's also family loans. Maybe you can reach out to grandma or mom and dad or great uncle or, you know, long lost cousin that hit the lottery, whatever, and maybe they can help you out. I just caution you on that. Doing money business with family sometimes, I don't know, I consider it kind of a risky business. And then of course, there's always Powerball. But I would prefer you just live within your means in this day and age and save as much as you can so you can put down at least 50% onto the project. And if you have to finance the rest, it's not that much of a financial burden. So there you go. Truly assessing an honest landscape budget within the resources and means that you have at your disposal. I hope this has helped out just a little bit. You might want to do some due diligence on your own. If you're considering a DIY project, hey, it doesn't take much but a Saturday to go out and start pricing and sourcing things and getting an idea. If you're truly naive to what the costs are, I strongly encourage you to go out and educate yourself a little bit. Hey, I appreciate you sticking with me all the way. If you're here with me still, consider subscribing. Check out some of my other educational videos. Also, check me out on all podcast carriers. I have a great podcast that's out there, and I'll catch you guys next week, every Friday. You guys take care, and as always, to your landscape success. Bye for now.